Dude, so you've decided to purchase a new vehicle in one of the most turbulent car markets since, well, before you were born. Well, I promise you, after watching this two-part segment, you will have a greater understanding of how the game works and how you can secure a car for the best deal possible. And if you're one of those greedy dealers that took advantage of people over the past few years, I hope the tips in this video help people to squeeze your dealerships dry. Now, I know a lot of you Gen Zs have a short attention span, so I made it easier for you. I split it up so that it's a two-part video, and both parts will be released back to back, so you won't have to wait for part two. The link will be in the description below and at the end of this video. But please understand that you have to watch both parts in its entirety. And you may want to either take notes or watch this more than once. If you skip over anything, it could cause you to miss out on a key detail. I know some of you would rather go to the dentist than to sit in front of a salesman or even watch a video about doing it. But I'm going to make it worth your while. I'm going to show you how to think like a buyer that the dealer won't see coming. So this segment applies to normal new vehicle purchases. I'll do other vehicles more specific to leases, used cars, and exotic cars later because there's some tweaking that's involved with some of the steps, especially with leases. But the same principles apply. So don't skip this if you are planning on leasing. I just don't have the finer details in this video. So what makes me qualified to give you this free advice? Well, because I said so. Okay, that's probably not good enough for you. So I'll preface this by giving you a brief description of my experience. Since I was 16, I purchased or leased almost 50 vehicles for myself, and quite a bit more than the average person, but I've also negotiated nearly 100 vehicles, including for friends and those that have asked for my help over the years. Just last year alone, I successfully negotiated 10 new vehicles at a huge discount. And in the peak of the pandemic, when there was a chip shortage in 2021, when everything was selling for huge markups, I successfully negotiated a deal well under MSRP and a hard-to-find SUV for not only myself, but two other friends, and we all got a substantial discount. So I feel a bit more experienced than maybe Uncle Bob or neighbor Bill on this, and the fact that I'm the first person that my network of friends called to get help on getting them the best deal does say something. Out of nearly 100 successful negotiations, only a small few didn't go my way, and I learned from the ones that didn't. Some people actually pay to get this information, and I'm giving it to you for free. This is a skill that took years to master. Now to start, you might want to take notes on this. There are 6 major steps involved in the way I have successfully approached the art of negotiating a vehicle purchase. And they are financing, researching, calling, tire kicking and test driving, negotiating, and finally purchasing. So to begin, let's talk about financing. Regardless of what you may have thought before, this step needs to be tackled first, not at signing. There are 3 ways you're going to purchase the vehicle. It's either going to be by paying cash, loan financing, which could also include leasing, or trading in a vehicle with more equity than the car you're purchasing. And it can be a combination of these 3. Leasing is an option, but again, it's tied to financing. It's a topic for another video, but the principles here will still apply. Before doing anything, first calculate how much car you can afford. If paying all cash, well, you're going to know exactly how much car you can afford. Now, because of the prices of cars these days, most of you are going to be financing. I understand that. New vehicles are very expensive. So if financing, you need to know how much cash you can fork over towards the down payment and how much the monthly payments are going to be and if you can afford them. Everyone's situation is different, but the soft rule of thumb is no more than 15% of your take-home pay going towards your vehicle. And that should include insurance and maintenance. Don't forget these important parts. You may bring home, let's say, $2,000 a month, and you think you can afford a $300 a month car payment. But in reality, it could be more like $500 or $600 with insurance and maintenance averaged out. Don't over leverage yourself. If you can't afford it, don't try to justify it. The world may tell you, you deserve it, go treat yourself. Nobody deserves to be so far in debt they can't take care of their obligations or family. Now, I'm not giving it financial advice here. I'm relaying basic starting guidelines. Maybe you are almost retired and have no mortgage, or living at home with your parents rent-free. You may be able to comfortably afford a vehicle at 20 or 25% of your take-home pay and still have enough for retirement and have money set aside for emergencies. So you need to either figure out for yourself what you can afford or talk to a financial advisor. So moving on, the first step is you need to secure the cash to purchase the vehicle. If you're getting a loan, you're going to have to do that through your local credit union or bank. Now remember, let me be clear, do this first. Unless you have the cash or the trade-in to wipe this new car purchase clean, you need to look for the best rate and get pre-approved. And most of the time, it's not going to be through the dealership. I'm not going to talk too much about this for time's sake, but the short of it is you'll likely get the best rate from your local credit union or an online bank that specializes in auto loans. We're also not going to talk about payments and payment structure and how many months and the terms in this video. But it's important to get the financing squared away first, because you're not going to be relying on the dealership financing, although you will still likely be financing through the dealer to start. I know it sounds like a paradox here, but we'll get into that later. Finally, make sure your insurance is in order and that it will cover the new vehicle. Check to see how much that insurance will cost monthly and factor that in. A lot of young guys that thought they could afford the special $600 a month Hellcat deals that were going on a few years back were in for a rude awakening when they saw their monthly insurance had shot up to $800 a month and cost more than the car loan itself because they were under 24 years of age. So have that figured out and have your policy printed out and ready to take to the dealer. Which now brings us to researching. You need to start by narrowing down the specifics on the vehicle you're buying. You may even change your mind along the ways when you're cross-shopping in this phase. But you need to choose wisely. And I say this because you may think you want a certain vehicle for like its MPGs or its looks, but upon further research, you may find that it's got common problems. You may find that it has terrible resale value. You may find that it's such a hot car that the ADMs or adjusted dealer markups on them are very high. You may also find a comparable vehicle with better rebates or better tax credits. These are all important factors to take in, so make sure the vehicle fits your needs and is readily available to purchase. You're not going to be able to negotiate an MSRP deal on a Z06 or a Demon. So you have to be realistic here, but you may actually be able to buy something like a regular C8 or a Scat Pack for close to sticker using these methods. And once you've decided on the vehicle, you need to narrow down the trim level and the options in your range. Now, I tend to always pick the best options that have the best resale value. And let's face it, you're not going to keep this car forever. You have to one day sell it. You want to make sure that you don't pick a color nobody wants or options nobody's willing to pay for. Now, I know people out there might be saying, well, you're buying this for you, but you also need to look out for future you. because you want to make a decision today that won't hurt you later when you go to sell it. I follow this rule whenever I purchase a daily driver or a supercar. Go with the specs that are easy to sell later. Here's an example. Let's say you're buying a big truck or SUV that has a high towing capacity. It doesn't matter if you think you're never going to tow anything with it. The majority of buyers will want the towing package and may pass yours up later when you sell it because it's missing a critical feature that costs much more later to install because of the wiring harness. Or even worse, you pay extra to get that bright pink SUV with a stripe down the middle. And you've just limited yourself now to an audience that is a small fraction of potential buyers. And it's going to be harder to sell, believe me. So don't hurt your future self by making a knuckleheaded mistake today. Get to know the car's options. You need to know this car forwards and back. Your goal is to know more about this car than the salesman himself, which may not be hard to do because they rarely know about the car that they're selling anyway. But get to know the vehicle. Hit up the forums, see what people are saying, watch YouTube reviews on it. Next, find the deals on the car you've settled on. Look for manufacturer rebates on their website. Go to the local dealers in your area, their websites in your area, and look for the deals there. If you qualify for employee discounts or you get a supplier or friends and family discount on the new vehicle, that's going to be to your advantage. So that sets a predetermined discount on the vehicle and makes it harder for the dealer to impose an ADM, though they might still try. When you see $1,000 dealer cash deals or lower APR financing in the ads, that means you probably have a winner. But check to see and make a note if the deal requires you to use the manufacturer financing, such as GMAC or Chrysler Capital. You need to circle back to this later in the next video. But for now, if there aren't any manufacturer deals that you can find, don't worry. The next thing you can do now is go to Auto Trader and Car Gurus. Find deals out there that the new car dealers have put out that they might be giving discounts on. Read the fine print in the ad when you see a car listed below the price of the rest. A lot of times they may require you to be Superman, though, to qualify for some of these stacked rebates. They might say you need to be a nurse, a fireman, a veteran, a teacher, all at once. And that's unreasonable and really difficult to secure a deal on, but you can still use that false advertising to your advantage later. I also like sites like Car Gurus because they show you how long the vehicle has been on the dealer lot. And this is important because if you have a vehicle that's been on the lot for, let's say, more than 90 days, you've got a winner there. There are other tools out there that you can use to your advantage to give you things like residual values and the MMR values. Now, there's something nearly every dealer has as part of their operations, and that is called floor plan. Dealers usually don't use they don't own these vehicles, I should say, outright. They typically finance the vehicles on their lot with what's called a floor plan bank. The rates change on these loans depending on the bank and the terms. And sometimes it's monthly, it's bi-monthly, or it could even be quarterly. But understand, a vehicle sitting on the lot for more than 60 or 90 days is hurting their bottom line, especially with the higher interest rates. So if a car is at, let's say, $50K invoice and it sits for 3 months at 6% interest, they just lost $750, plus the liability and the space that it takes up. Cars that sit and don't get used start having problems. They get dead batteries. They're susceptible to moisture and mold and rust buildup on the rotors, and they have to keep these cars clean and in good shape, and that all costs money. So dealers want to move this old inventory so they can bring in fresh inventory. Plus, that vehicle is not helping with their month-end numbers or quarterly dealer bonuses. They want to move them, believe me. So use this to your advantage. If you see a vehicle that's been sitting for 90 days or even 60 days, you have a car the dealer likely wants to move. And if it's the last year's model, they definitely want to dump it fast. You're going to also look at competitors around a 250-mile radius to these dealers, even if you're not actually going to buy from them. Print out their deals or screenshot them on your phone and have them ready. You're going to need them for both your phone conversations and your in-person negotiating. Now, you're also going to focus on finding this car that you've decided on at 3 different dealerships, and you'll actually have to probably contact all of them, and you're going to want to potentially drive all of them. This is important because you're going to need a backup in case the deal falls through or goes sour or the first vehicle is sold. You don't want to have wasted your entire weekend on just this one car at one dealership. So have backup dealers, which leads us to the next step of calling. Now, you can start doing this step at any time after the research step, but the best time is to start a week before the end of the month. Your strategy is going to revolve around timing as well as wasting the salesperson's time when he's trying to hit his targets and goals at the end of the month. You'll understand more on this later. So focus on timing. You need to start getting in the ear of the salesperson at the dealership a few days before you actually go see the vehicle. Now, it may seem tempting to go see the vehicle the same day you call, but you're not ready yet for that. So you don't want to seem desperate either. The only exception to this is if the car is really hard to find or if it's already the last day or two of the month. But you want to try to, as much as possible, start this a week before and schedule a few days before the end of the month. You're going to do this at all 3 dealerships, even if you don't plan on going to see the other 2. So spend the first day calling them up. Call them and get a salesperson on the line, and preferably a lead sales manager or one that's very familiar with the model you are buying. You're going to start by asking him intelligent questions. Now, remember earlier when I said to get to know the vehicle? Well, that's where you're going to start using this to your advantage. Control the conversation. You are an intelligent buyer. You are not a sucker, and you will never let the dealer get the upper hand in the conversation. Now, you're not going to be condescending, but if you hear him say some baloney fact or figure or nonsense, you're going to politely call him out on it and let him know that you know what you're talking about. Once he sees that he's not working with an idiot, he has to approach you in a different way than he would a schmuck with no clue. So politely correct him where wrong, and even text him proof of what you're saying if he contests it. Now that you've established your ground, he's not likely at this point to try and pull a fast one on you, but keep your guard up because he may try it again later. Now, bring up the discounts you saw online. Let him know if you qualify for employee pricing or friends and family. Bring up the Superman clause from earlier that you saw in the ad, and tell me you would be interested in purchasing this vehicle if he'd help you out on a couple of the stacked bonuses. Maybe you qualify for none, or maybe just 1 or 2, but tell him that you want him to get you the same deal that they were advertising in that ad. Even if you can't win every part of this early negotiation phase, don't worry, you're going to circle back to it later when you arrive in person. Finally, ask them to send you a clear copy of the window sticker to your email, preferably. Text messages can be blurry, and they know this. So a lot of times they'll send you a blurry window sticker that you can't see the options on it. But get that window sticker for each car at each dealer. We'll talk about this later in the next video. So through this whole process, you're going to be cordial but stern. Remember, you control the narrative, not them. The goal at this point is to get confirmation that you have found, hopefully, 3 potential vehicles at 3 different dealers. Set a date to come in, see the vehicle. Now, this is important because it depends on how much time that you have and how close to the end of the month it is. You're going to want to set the test drive date to around 3 days before the end of the month or close to it. You really need to set aside a full day, if not 2 days, in case the first deal falls through. You can't give yourself just a couple hours on the last day of the month either. But if all you can do is a few hours a day, split it up among 3 or 4 days. And do not put a deposit down over the phone unless it's a very hard car to get and the deposit is fully refundable. This is very important. I've put deposits down over the phone on cars that are in transit, and that's fine, but make sure you get it in writing that it's fully refundable. Some dealers might try to tell you that, oops, no, it's not, but most states it is. And get it in writing, even if your state doesn't allow non-refundable deposits. So set the times, preferably earlier in the day. Plan on spending some time with a few hours with both the vehicle and the salesperson. And this is a very important part. If he asks you how you intend to pay, do not say cash. And do not say through your bank. You tell him you haven't decided yet. And that is true because it will depend on them later. Change the subject. You'll get back to that later in part 2 of this video. And that's where I'm going to let you take a break. Soak all this in because you're not going to want to miss the next video because this is going to be where you take control of the deck. Part 2 is where the fun begins, and you're going to hopefully have the dealer crying uncle by the time it's over. So why don't you make like a tree and click part 2?